Now, a number of accountants and auditors have been implicated in the VBS scandal. KPMG, South Africa's reputation, is taking yet another heavy blow. Serious questions are now being asked about corporate governance, the Reserve Bank's oversight role, and the audit and accounting professions. To discuss this, I'm joined by the Secretary General of the Association of the Advancement of Black Accountants in South Africa, Luyanda, Gidini, and Robert Vivian of the Wits School of Economics and Business Sciences. Good evening to both of you, gentlemen. Thanks very much for joining us. Once again, members of the audit profession not covering themselves in glory in this episode, Prof, and that's to put it mildly.
No, I would agree with you. But I think we have an unusual circumstance which has taken place. I don't think I can think of another case in the world where this happened. Seems like a bank has been stolen by its own managers.
How is that even possible?
Well, it shouldn't be possible. I mean, there's so many internal controls, and yet they seem to have all failed in this case. I mean, we can blame the auditors and accountants, but there are a lot of internal controls. There's a standard accounting practices which didn't seem to stop. It's really just quite an extraordinary thing. I mean, what started off as an interesting bank issue turns out to be, if we accept the report, seems to be a case of somebody trying to steal a bank. I mean, if you look at the deposit figures that you've got and look at the amount which was stolen, it's like virtually all the deposits were just being stolen. So I mean, it's unprecedented. I mean, you normally can get some sort of fraud where somebody defaults on a loan or grants a loan to themselves. But when you look at the figures and the vast range of people involved, it's really an extraordinary state of affairs. I mean, it's hard to find the words to express it. I started off thinking this is going to be a very interesting banking problem. Yeah? It's not, it's just a straight theft, just, if we believe the report. But I think we must add a caveat, though. Is the report that we've got, it's not a court inquiry. It is an investigation which is normally launched at the beginning to be able to get the facts into some sort of focus, and from that, a more detailed report. So I think we have to not accept this as being the correct, because it is a whole process still to go. If you read the end of the report, I mean, that's the recommendation, it be referred to the investigating and the criminal prosecution and the recovery people. So there's another process. So technically, one should say people are innocent until proven guilty, and they haven't had the benefit. The chairman in this, if you read the report, he was not asked to comment on it. The view was that there's so much evidence against him that he can express his views in a different forum, which will be the criminal court.
Now, irrespective, of what you're saying and the amount of work that still has to go into establishing a lot of the facts and the extent of the guilt of those who are involved with such brazenness, it must be. There are certain things that are clear here. Wrongs were committed. That is pretty much clear. It's probably the extent to which this has happened, and whether indeed it is the people or some of the people that whose names have been put out there, isn't it?
Well, definitely. I think we're still in the initial phases of just trying to uncover what has transpired at VBS. Some of the facts that have been shown are definitely a cause of concern, not only as a professional in the accounting profession. Personally, I mean, it's very concerning to see that the very people that are charged at governance, I mean, from the very highest level, from the chairperson of the board to your executives, managers, and even, I mean, people that are basically brought in there to protect the interests of the public, to see them basically just be looking out of their own self-interest. And I think what this report has basically shown us is, I mean, we haven't even started in unveiling or unraveling everything that has taken place at this bank, which is unfortunate. But I believe it's a reflection of where we find ourselves as a society as a whole. Not only, I mean, in South Africa, but I think in the world, when you look at the different kind of transgressions and the different maladministrations within the auditing fraternity, I just think, I mean, if we, I mean, the easiest thing to do would look, I mean, in the context of South Africa is to look at certain organizations as Steinhoff. But there's many other organizations, people who have been put in positions of trust, which have basically let us down.
I'm sorry, I mean, these people could not have been as brazen.
Yeah.
Right? And when you look at the amounts, I think none of this, or very little of this, would have happened if there was no fertile ground for what they have done, isn't it?
I think, I mean, if you look at the complicity and everyone who's involved, not only did, I mean, if you look at the auditor involved, the head auditor, Mr. Sipho Malabo, not only did he perhaps turn a blind eye in other institutions, if you look at charges against, well, African banks, some of the things that have been discussed there in terms of Deloitte's participation. But he personally benefited from the fraudulent activities, which is something I think in all the different discussions that we had, or all the stories and investigations that come out, is almost a bit unique in terms of how someone being put at one of the largest auditing firms in the world, trusted with such such a huge responsibility, then deem it okay to basically then personally benefit, not declaring related party transactions, the loans that he received from the bank. And then in terms of what did the employer do when they find out about these transgressions, I think it's just so concerning to see that the level of fraud is not just a few, it almost seems like it's pervasive in its entire organization. And I think as the Association of Black Accounts for the Advancement of Black Accounts in South Africa, we welcome these kind of reports coming out, because whenever there's, I mean, especially, I mean, if you think about what VBS represents and what it was supposed to represent, it was basically black excellence in terms of us basically using our own funds for it to benefit our communities. And for us to then see this tragic story on how an organization such as this, trusted with probably some of the best minds or best practitioners, and how everything could go wrong. I mean, we're literally redefining the textbooks in terms of how fraud can take place, what does it mean to be an auditor, what responsibilities and what sort of internal controls, what kind of checks and balances should exist. So it's a very interesting case.
Okay. We're going to take a quick ad break. We'll continue our discussion on the VBS scandal right after this.